At the end of 2022, after a couple months in open beta, Multiversus went offline to prepare for its full release, in a move that I really respected. The platform fighter had become a viral hit, but so many problems had begun to pile up that really caused the game to lose steam over time. Netcode issues, inconsistent hitboxes, questionable character choices enhanced by an even more questionable character release tempo. I thought it was really admirable that they just pulled the plug for a hard reset when so many games in a similar position would just continue to coast off of skin sales until nobody was playing. However, in the lead up to the game's grand return, there were some choices that didn't really bode confidence. Larger promotional crossovers with McDonald's and the NHL before the game was even playable, developer blogs highlighting really small changes as if they were game-changing additions, and pages upon pages of developer tweets that feature some form of "oh man, you guys won't believe what we're cooking over here," with no evidence of said cooking ever occurring. All while Warner Bros. Discovery spent the last year brazenly canceling every creative project possible for tax breaks, making the idea of a game celebrating the legacy of the WB kinda tone deaf, and adding fuel to the fire. When the game eventually did come back from its hiatus, it came back with barely any more content. 2 new stages with some variations, and only 3 new playable characters, one of which being Banana Guard. I loved Multiversus, and I've been anxiously awaiting its return. But I would be lying if I said that recapturing that magic wasn't going to be an insane uphill battle going in. And now that it's in our hands, I think we still have a lot of battle left in front of us. The most immediate new change to Multiversus from the beta is the gameplay. The core has been retooled a little bit, they jumped ship to a new engine, and as a result, the game is much slower. And frankly, I don't hate this change. I think people are being a little dramatic when they say this game is unplayable now compared to how the beta moved, because within 2 seconds in my first match back, I was already pulling the same bullshit I did back in the day. The muscle memory has all been retained. The actual issue that makes this game unplayable is the new camera. For a reason that I'm still not 100% sure I get, for the relaunch they made all the characters much larger on the stage, but they didn't change the camera to account for that, and now everything is just weirdly close. Like, it's not a game breaker, but why? Other than that, we have our new roster additions. I'll talk about them more later. There's been some minor balance adjustments with some characters getting new moves, and every character now has a brand new dash attack and parry in their arsenal. And in terms of gameplay, that's kind of it. Playing Multiversus again, there was a resounding "that's it" around every corner. After a year off, I expected more of a splash when the game finally returned. But ultimately, Multiversus's revival is more of a story about removals than it is about additions. They removed the gold currency, they removed the try before you buy on the characters in the training room, they removed the ability to earn battle pass progress outside of challenges, they removed the post-match statistics, they removed the 2D character portraits and replaced them with uglier 3D ones. In fact, the game UI just looks uglier across the board now. They removed the ability to play against bots. They removed the ability to change characters in casual matches. They removed the ability to get rid of the stupid red and blue tint over the characters. And worst of all, they removed the advertised feature of every character and every perk being unlocked in local play. So now the idea of this game having any kind of competitive scene is just thrown out the window. And in complete fairness, some of these issues have been addressed or are promised to be addressed in the future. But then that just begs the question, why did we launch like this? Did you really need the internet to tell you that removing some of these features was a bad idea? These removals range from kind of confusing to downright sinister on the part of WB. And even for the most harmless ones, much like the changes to the gameplay, I can't see for a second how any of this provides a tangible benefit to the player. The biggest actual improvements here come in the form of things you can't really see. Better netcode, more consistent hitboxes, a new engine. And while I agree that these things are important additions, when this game is so clearly targeting a casual audience, I think we needed a little more. Like, this is the first thing you see when you load into the game. Not some fun welcome back, but paragraphs about how all the different currencies translate into each other. And speaking of currency, the progression here is all fucked too. Multiversus in beta had 3 forms of currency to keep track of. Toast, which gave other players gold, which was earned in-game through basic gameplay, and Gleamium, which had to be purchased with real money. Most cosmetic items were only available for Gleamium purchase, but all of the fighters and certain cosmetics were available for gold as well. And since you could rack up gold pretty quickly, even more so through being toasted by other players, it was a pretty good system. Yeah, there was a grind, but it wasn't an incessant grind. The only people who were buying fighters for Gleamium were those who wanted to support the game in the first place. Contrast that to now, with 5 currencies. Gleamium returns alongside Toast, which now awards fighter currency used to unlock new fighters. Also new here is perk currency, used to unlock perks that used to be locked behind character mastery, a change that I actually quite like, and prestige currency, used for cosmetics and is earned by buying cosmetics. It's kind of like a reward point system. You get a little kickback every time you unlock something. The problem here is that all of these resources accumulate at a snail's pace. Allegedly, it takes 38 hours of PvP gameplay to get enough fighter currency to unlock 1 new character. 38 hours? When Battlefront 2 did this shit back in 2017, it was considered the worst thing to ever happen to gaming. But nowadays, games are just like that. And I can hear the comments now, the game is free, they need to make money somehow. And it's like, yeah, they do. That's what the item shop is for. The agreement for a while was that cosmetics were fine to paywall, but gameplay functions, those need to be easily accessible. None of this pride and accomplishment shit. But the landscape has changed so much that you will now find people actively defending this choice. WB is not gonna fuck you, bro. If anything, they're gonna like remove your favorite cartoon from HBO Max and then like laugh at you, I guess. Credit where credit is due, Player First Games has tried to deliver on their namesake. If you played during the beta, you get a free premium battle pass, a bunch of free currency, and extra cosmetics. But if you will for a second, think about little Jimmy from Idaho who wants to play this game because he heard his favorite character, the Joker, is now playable. If he boots up this game for the first time tomorrow, assuming he does all of the quests he can and gets toasted every match, he will still need to play around 10 hours of Multiversus PvP to unlock him. Probably even more so, because for some reason, the Joker is worth twice as much as every other character. I hope he likes playing as Shaggy. Or Banana Guard, you know, little Jimmy. I'm sure kids these days totally have strong feelings for these two. The main retort that I've seen to this is that you don't have to play PvP. You get way more currency for playing Rift Mode. And you might be wondering, what is Rift Mode? And I would reveal to you that Rift Mode was something that I was purposefully leaving out until now. That's right, I was lying. Multiversus' Rift Mode is a series of matches versus character AI with a loose theme and plot surrounding them. And occasionally, there's a couple mini-games to help break up the monotony. For my Smash Bros folks in the audience, this is their World of Light. When they first announced this, my immediate thought was, oh my god, this is what they spent the dev time on. It was okay that we're only getting 3 new characters, because they're including a meaty story mode for us to sink our teeth into. And would you be shocked to discover that I find this game mode to be as lackluster and lame as everything else? It's just typical matches versus the computer, but with equipable gems that boost your stats, and every now and then Batman's character portrait will appear in the corner and interject to give the illusion of a larger story. Only the illusion though. Most of this dialogue is not very interesting. Ultimately, this would be harmless, just a mode that I would probably never choose to play. But there are a couple larger issues here that make this whole thing feel downright offensive. For one, matches against AI are never good in stuff like this. I play a lot of fighting games, and to me, the appeal has always been found in playing against other people. When 2 people who both have a solid understanding of their characters go against each other, the mind games create an electric energy unique to the genre. Oh no, this guy knows how to block my combo. I'll have to mix it up next time. Oh no, this guy is really good at a character that I have commonly dismissed as very weak. This will be an interesting and unique challenge. Maybe you both play the same character and spend the first couple seconds of the round crouching at each other to showcase sportsmanship. Being locked into a fighting game with someone else is a uniquely intimate and personal experience in the world of gaming. And no matter how good the AI is, it's an experience that cannot be recreated when playing against a computer. Even more so when they start adding these pseudo RPG elements and you suddenly have to start micromanaging equipment that gives you +5 punch damage and -3 fire attack defense, and the entangling dance of fighting games becomes a game about who has the higher numbers. And I find that way less interesting. Street Fighter's World Tour sucks because of it, Smash Bros.' World of Light sucks because of it, Mortal Kombat's Invasion suck because of it. Why are we still making modes like this? The other reason Rift Mode sucks is because it sucks. It's just badly made. I got through my first playthrough of Rift Mode on experience difficulty in less than 2 hours. That was doing as many side missions as I could, and I chose the hardest difficulty available at the time because I like to think I'm pretty good at this game. Yet aside from this, I found the rifts to be mind-numbingly easy, aside from a couple mini-games that were hard, mostly because they were broken. Why didn't I go to a harder difficulty than the second easiest one if I found it so easy? Because to play a harder difficulty, you first need to level up your gems, the main MacGuffin of Rift Mode. Gems are leveled up exclusively through these loot boxes that you get for doing dailies, completing challenges, and sometimes you just kinda get some. It didn't seem that consistent. But the problem with that is that the amount of gem XP that you get for doing dailies is basically negligible, so the real way to level up is by completing these challenges, which for the most part are basic tasks. Do 5 dash attacks, don't take too much damage, fair enough. But the problem with that is that some of these challenges include winning with specific character types. Human characters, villainous characters, characters from the DC universe, etc. And the problem with that is that you have to buy all the characters, so it's very feasible that someone playing this game for the first time won't have the currency needed to unlock the characters to do the challenges to level up their gems, effectively locking them out of Rift Mode entirely. Hell, not even just someone playing the game for the first time, I couldn't complete the rifts. I've spent $100 on this game like the sucker I am, and I was still locked out of multiple paths on launch because I had to wait one more day before I could play as the Banana Guard. And when I finally did get that path open, I couldn't even complete all the challenges because I needed the Lady Banana Guard skin, which unlocked 5 days later. Yes, the skins also have their own specific character tags to worry about. Another pathway later on was available exclusively for costumes that wore graphic t-shirts. And I thought, oh, Steven Universe wears a graphic tee, I'll use him. Not so. Only characters wearing these costumes, obtained exclusively with Gleamium in the shop or with daily login rewards, can be used on these missions. And this daily login event's not going to be around for much longer. The game does give you a little Gleamium for leveling up characters and as part of events, but it's far from a renewable resource, requiring the player to spend the little free premium currency they get on ugly costumes just so they can progress in this nothing burger of a PvE mode feels pretty mean on the part of player-first games. Not to mention, every mission also features the challenge of winning the fight in co-op, which based on the milestones needed to get these loot boxes and the amount of challenges available to the player, in order to level up your gems to their maximum potential, you have the choice of playing every single mission perfectly or playing with a friend. Which is really annoying, because I rocketed through most of these on launch day by myself without considering the challenges, which means I had to play through all of them, again, with a dummy account. At least it keeps the camera zoomed out. And even if I hadn't done that, I would have to play every mission multiple times anyways, because all of the missions and challenges are identical for every difficulty. And with the sparse amounts of available XP, they are all but requiring you to play every mission on every difficulty with as many challenges completed as necessary. Especially because right now, you can unlock a new character for free if you beat 20 bosses for the first time. And the same boss cleared on different difficulties counts towards this goal. So the ideal way to do that is to beat every individual difficulty at 100% and pray to God that gives you enough gem XP to play the hardest difficulty, which it didn't for me, so it sometimes just might not be. And you also have to individually level up every set of gems for each of the rifts. You can't bring your purple gems into the green missions. And because the gems are leveled up exclusively through loot boxes, there's no guarantee that the gems you want to level up will be getting any XP from the crates you open. But don't worry, if you find this system at all overwhelming, you can just buy Gem XP with Gleamium. I'm sure at least a little bit of the roughness with this mode is manifesting from the fact that I'm trying to complete it super early on. Hell, by the time this video releases, it's probably already a little bit better. It's a live service game. There'll be more challenges to do later, more things to farm. But as I said earlier, this mode is how you get the most currency. This is the mode to farm right now at launch, and they couldn't even make that enjoyable. The earlier difficulties are way too easy, the later difficulties are way too hard, and the challenges being the main way to level up just feels like yet another layer of trying to get the player to cave and spend money. Like, because this season is Joker themed, a lot of the missions in the first rift have a challenge that straight up requires you to play as the Joker. A character who, might I remind you, is arbitrarily twice as expensive as the rest of the cast. I say arbitrarily, but we all know why. The third rift introduces a series of missions that you have to be Jason in order to play, but you can't even grind for Jason. He's available exclusively through the premium battle pass. And the third rift is the only way you can level up your red gems, and you need the red gems for some of the missions in the green rift. So you might as well pony up. The fact that they don't reward even the smallest amount of gem XP upon completion of a match is crazy to me. They did this with the battle pass at first too. Why is everything locked behind challenges? Doing challenges like this in a fighting game is bad news across the board. Do you want players going online and spamming the same attack over and over again because they need to hit 10 of them for the battle pass? Because if you do that, they will. They only added the ability to earn battle pass XP in normal matches after we complained loud enough. And then we had to complain again because they implemented it so greedily that it would take upwards of 200 wins to get one level. And even now, after that update, it still feels like it could be better. How many times are we gonna have this conversation? Fortnite may have challenges, but you still get 1000 XP for just fishing. Why isn't just playing the game enough for WB to consider me worthy of Steven Universe in a tuxedo? And you might say that the game itself should be motivation enough for someone to play. And I would agree, extrinsic rewards should never be the reason anyone plays a game. But the fact that there is a battle pass and I'm not making progress on it actively makes me not want to touch this game. A good battle pass means there's always a reason to play a game. A bad battle pass makes me actively dread booting up the game in fear that I won't get all of the rewards. Number go up good, number staying still bad. And in this game, it is more number stay still than number go up. So the gameplay is less than or equal to what we had before. The resource economy is much worse, the progression is also much worse, and Rift mode is uncompletable in its current state. So what exactly did I like about the Multiversus relaunch? Would it be enough to say that I am just happy I can play this game again? All jokes aside, I like the new characters. Well, at least I like most of them. I don't have a particularly strong fondness for either the Joker or Jason Voorhees, but they're fun gets with fun movesets. Jason's bag move in particular. Big fan, silly in all the right ways. Likewise, the new stages are pretty cool. It's kind of annoying that both of them are for characters not currently in the game and feature insane stage hazards to dodge, but the visuals and music deliver. I like that they recast Rick and Morty using the new show actors and actually got them to record unique dialogue for the game instead of the archive audio they were using. Although it's a little unfortunate that the game devs left all of Rick's dialogue with unreleased characters in the game files, causing what I assume is the next year's worth of DLC to be leaked. But hey, we get funny Rick jokes now. I like the ugly baby skin of Jake from Adventure Time. I think this is a pretty good bit, a good deep cut. I would have liked it more if we got another character from Adventure Time, but unfortunately it's just Finn and Jake, and nobody else. Okay, fine, let's talk about Banana Guard. Banana Guard is a character choice that I would respect if we were on year 3 of this game, or if it was like a super dedicated April Fool's bit. But in the current reality where this game is desperately trying to recapture its once immense audience, putting development resources into a joke character instead of a hype-generating fan favorite for the relaunch is a crazy choice. The way they were advertising this character as if it was the craziest thing to ever happen to gaming and doubling down on wacky banana marketing was just hard to watch, especially when we already have a way funnier joke character with a way more interesting gameplay gimmick in the form of LeBron James. I get it, they wanted their own Smash Bros. Piranha Plant moment, but Smash Bros. Earned Piranha Plant by releasing 5 critically acclaimed video games and having 69 other full-fledged characters on offer. Multiversus was already on thin ice, like time and place. Also, it's worth mentioning that while Piranha Plant is clearly a joke, they're still subject to the same consideration of the source material that most Smash Bros. Characters are. Every one of Piranha Plant's moves is a reference to something that the Piranha Plants do in the Mario series. And if the Banana Guard was made with that same love, and every one of their moves was a picture-perfect recreation of some of their gags from Adventure Time, I'd be all in. Their up special could be the Banana Guard 500, the down special could be shedding their peels, their taunt could be the Mama Said dance. But instead it's just a generic spear guy moveset. He plays more like what I would picture out of Bandana D than anything my encyclopedic knowledge of Adventure Time leads me to believe a Banana Guard would fight like. In fact, to me, it kinda sounds like they just wanted a cheap, boring character with an uninspired moveset and no references to the source material made from retooled beta assets that they could give away for free as an incentive to new players, while they continue to lock everyone that anyone might actually feel strongly about behind a paywall. Banana Guard is emblematic of everything wrong with the current state of multiverses. From concept, to the teasers, to the fact that they time gate you so you have to wait a full 24 hours after logging on before you can play with them. It just illustrates such a clear disconnect from the devs to the audience. And on that, I don't think Multiverses knows how to market their game at all. Following news during the months leading up to relaunch was a harrowing experience because it seems like the official social channels are allergic to posting actual game information, instead just posting some really strange memes made with existing assets. It feels like for whatever reason, there's some quota of professionalism that needs to be maintained on the official socials, and thus any announcements made with less formality get thrown to the community manager socials, but the community managers tend to overhype everything, so it just leads to the entire delivery feeling so inauthentic. Even now, amongst the heaps of criticism this game is getting, all of it was addressed first on the Twitter account of the game director, and I feel it's a little irresponsible to put the target on his personal account instead of, the brand. It sets a precedent where the official channels are always the last ones to make any announcements, and all of the community managers talk about the game like it's the second coming of Christ. So the only authentic communication you can guarantee is from the game director himself, leading to screenshots of tweet replies and Discord DMs being the premier Multiverses news source. And like, no tea, no shade to my guy Tony, but I don't love how he's addressing these criticisms with more empty promises. I have no idea what soon means in this context. I've waited months for this game to come back, and now that it is back, basic customization settings that were there in the beta are gone and coming soon. These are the guys that teased Black Adam as a headliner for the first season of the beta. He was right there when you booted up the game, and they didn't release him for 3 months. What is soon to you? Half of the strange removals made when coming over from the beta are apparently already implemented features coming soon, and it really sucks that those couldn't make it to launch, but I'm glad that they had the time to implement lives for the PvE mode, lives that have to be purchased with Gleamium. Although, according to them, that's just a bug. Not at all a planned feature currently in the game that they're walking back due to community feedback. You see what I mean about it feeling inauthentic? It says a lot about the content delivery of this game that the most prominent members of the community are the people who leak shit from the game files. And listen, I hate leakers as much as the next guy, but for Multiverses, the leakers are the people keeping interest in the game alive. Twitter user @MultiverSusie has done more for my intrigue in this game than anything any of the devs did during the break. She was out here doing community outreach, talking to people, keeping the love alive, even when there were no leaks to speak of. Because, you know, there was no game to speak of. It does so much when a community figurehead actually talks like a real person and isn't just endlessly gassing up the game or teasing some new content coming at some vague date. How much of this is the fault of the team over at Player First Games, and how much of this is the fault of the corporate suits at WB constantly pushing for faster returns? I don't know, and we likely won't know until Jason Schreier does a post-mortem Bloomberg article about the game. But given that this is the third game to release in a borderline unfinished state from WB, I have a couple guesses. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much is cooking. It doesn't matter what's on the horizon. These lofty plans and leaked rosters of 40+ characters aren't going to see the light of day if no one is playing this game in 2 weeks. And based on my experiences here, I'd be willing to bet that no one is going to be playing this game in 2 weeks. Well, anyone aside from me, of course. I feel like I know what the comments are gonna say about this video as I make it. Some variation of don't like, don't play. And you know what? Sure, fine. But I love this game! I poured hundreds of hours into the beta. The video I made on it was the longest I had made on the channel up until that point. I spent weeks telling anyone who would listen how excited I was to be playing Multiversus again. I even woke up at 4 AM so I could play this game the moment it launched. This isn't a hate video. It's a disappointment video. Even playing it now, I still find the fun in the core gameplay, but it's strong core gameplay that I have to dig through hours and hours of the most consumer unfriendly practices known to man to touch. And I can't ignore that. I used to think that the worst case scenario for this game was that they would never come back from hiatus, but I was oh so wrong because I know now that this is the worst case scenario. The game comes back, but with more of a whimper than a roar, changing core mechanics and failing to capture a new audience while also alienating the dwindling count of people who still gave a shit after the game delisted for a year. It kind of feels like the game that came back from the dead is in a worse spot than how it was when it died, which is crazy because it died in a pretty bad spot. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic for Multiversus' future, but I'm not optimistic. Realistically, as long as they keep pumping out goofy crossovers, there will always be a swath of new faces checking out this game. Whether or not it'll be a pleasurable experience for those new faces is another question. Me personally, I'm locked in. I'm dedicated to being part of the problem. You thought that all of this was enough to get me to stop playing? Nah man, I went down with the ship with Avengers, and there is no way that this game can fail so catastrophically bad that I regard it worse than Avengers. But with that being said, I also still can't recommend anyone play it. Now maybe if they added more means to progress the battle pass, sped up the gameplay again, fixed the camera, fixed rift mode, added more means to unlock new fighters, and added Ted Lasso as a playable character, it would be a great foundation to build off of. But updates like that are going to take time. And after waiting a year for the game to come back in the first place, it's really a kick in the butt to be told that I have to keep waiting. But I will keep waiting. And I imagine a lot of the dedicated fan base will keep waiting. But that's not the people you should be worried about. The question is, will Warner Brothers keep waiting? You know, Warner Bros, who have been killing every single creative project that doesn't bring back 9 figures in the first quarter of investment. Will they wait for the patches to come? Will they wait for the promises being made? Will they wait for the cooking to be done? I guess we will just have to wait and see. See ya! When Multiversus relaunched at the end of May, I was left with a very negative impression. I thought the game was heading straight for another nosedive into dead game obscurity. But to my surprise, it's actually held up quite well. Player numbers, while not outstanding, are consistently in the quadruple digits, putting it on par with a lot of its contemporaries. New content, updates, and events are released on a bi-weekly schedule, and the game overall feels like it's in a much healthier state after shedding its relaunch jitters. Yet despite this, the game still has its fair share of work to do. Player sentiment is still mostly negative, monetization is still very predatory and only getting worse, and even with the fixes and content updates, it's all built atop an aggressively anti-consumer foundation that that you have to grind through in order to experience any of the good stuff. But there is good stuff here, and the game's second season, titled Back in Time, adds more of it and allows what was already there to shine even brighter. So did they fix multiverses? Well, let's talk about it. Right out the gate, my first impression of Multiversus' second season was far more positive. In my video covering Multiversus' relaunch and first season, which, by the way, I highly recommend you watch as context for the rest of this, I had a sizable portion of the script dedicated to how lousy the first impression was. It wasn't exciting, there wasn't a lot of new content, a lot of the quality of life features from the beta were missing, a lot of the more consumer-friendly choices from the beta were completely eradicated, balance was all over the place, and things as foundational as core gameplay were left overall feeling much worse. And I'll just say flat out, almost all of that monologue is outdated now. The quality of life stuff returned, they've retooled how a lot of the live service elements work, and put considerable effort into adding new mechanics and fixes to make matches feel as polished as possible. Obviously, this is Multiversus we're talking about, so things are never quite as good as they seem, we'll get into that more later, but on paper, it looks good for developer player-first games. And quite frankly, they deserve some kudos for that. Headlining Multiversus Season 2 is Samurai Jack, and while I didn't resonate with his gameplay, I love that he's here. Almost all of Multiversus' roster can be sorted into 3 camps: nostalgic 80s properties, new age Gen Z cartoons, and nostalgic 80s properties that have sustained popularity for long enough to become new age Gen Z cartoons. And Samurai Jack is a character who is very important to a lot of people around my age who doesn't fit clearly into these descriptors. And he's a fighter. He's from an action cartoon. It makes perfect sense for him to be here, which is something you cannot say about Beetlejuice. Listen, I love Beetlejuice, especially what they've been doing with the property lately. Alex Brightman, Fizzaroli. But his inclusion here feels strange. His moveset didn't click with me at all, and he doesn't tie in very cleanly with the season's theme of Back in Time. Unless, of course, we're traveling back to a time where Beetlejuice was still relevant. WB must have a list of characters that you have to shove into every one of these big crossover things, because I always see characters like Beetlejuice, or the Gremlins, or the Iron Giant, and I have to wonder how much pull these franchises actually have. Plus, we all know they only added him so they could get brand synergy with Beetlejuice in theaters September 6th. I'll see you next season when they add the Wicked Witch of the West, who is also in all these crossovers, to promote the film adaptation of Wicked, a movie that I am so confident is only going to be remembered for causing Ethan Slater's divorce. Added alongside our new characters were 2 new stages: the Titans Tower from Teen Titans Go, and the WB Water Tower from the first 5 seconds of every Warner Bros. Movie. This game still only really has a handful of stages, and even though most of them end up feeling pretty similar in a competitive setting, the musical and visual variety is heavily appreciated. I really like how Jake and Shaggy hang out and play video games in the background of the Titans Tower stage. Sometimes I forget that this game is an actual crossover, so seeing the worlds blend like this is always fun. I will say, this game has an annoying habit of introducing characters separately from their stages. Like, they announced Samurai Jack, and we know he's eventually getting his own stage thanks to this promo art, but it's nowhere to be seen this season. And then last season, they introduced Townsville and Dexter's Lab without their accompanying characters. I feel like it would be a better play in the long run to bundle these characters with their stages in order to keep hype up. Because now when we do eventually get Dexter or the PPG or probably Raven from Teen Titans, it's not gonna feel as special. I get that they're probably trying to build hype by slowly teasing characters like, oh look, the Powerpuff Girls were in the Joker trailer, they've been here the whole time. But with the way fans interact with these games in the current gaming landscape, it's less, oh man, we're finally getting this character that's been teased since day one, and more, where are these characters that they've been dangling over our heads since day one? I much prefer the Super Smash Bros. Style of shotgun character announcements where you know nothing going in, and by the end of it, know literally everything. Otherwise, it's really easy to notice the glaring absences in the room. Like how you may have noticed that I haven't talked about any of the live service aspects of this live service game. The way Multiversus encourages people to log in day to day is through events. Daily challenges that unlock rewards pertaining to whatever theme. Like last time around, there was a whole event based around Shark Week, and you got characters wearing shark heads as a skin. It's cute, if superfluous. Problem being, the endgame rewards for one event were always a key part in the next one. So week 1, if you completed all the challenges and got Velma with a Joker shirt, then in week 2, 22, you would have a challenge that could only be completed by having Velma in that skin. Combine this with the fact that you needed to complete basically all of the available daily and weekly challenges for an event in order to get that endgame skin that you would need for the next one, and you can already see the cracks. If you missed 1 day's worth of challenges, that very well could have been the end of your ability to get anything out of the rest of the season. I would know. I brought my laptop on a cross-country road trip and played Multiversus in hotel rooms to avoid that fate. Strict time gating like this may be great for keeping people invested in the micro short term, but the second a player falls out of this system they've created, they're just gonna stop caring entirely. In Splatoon 3, I failed to get the dab emote before Season 1 ended, and I basically stopped playing multiplayer forever because of it. Sometimes that's all it takes. Season 2 changes the system up by having events be less challenge-based and more time-based. There are still challenges to complete, but you'll be getting most of your event points by playing box standard matches. And in exchange, you get a unique currency exclusive to the event. Beetlejuice gave out these beetles, the Olympics gave out medals, so on and so forth. And in exchange for this, you can purchase skins related to the event's theme. But you can also convert them to any of the game's other currencies, including the premium currency, Gleamium. I really like this system. I haven't liked a lot of the event skins. The recolors especially are not my vibe, but the fact that you can grind these events to get Gleamium is weirdly generous. For a game as greedy as Multiversus, they give this stuff out quite a bit. They give a free-to-play player the opportunity to earn more than enough to afford the game's battle pass, which in turn gives you almost enough Gleamium to completely recoup the cost, and then from there you can earn enough to earn some pretty cool skins decently quickly. Let's be clear, I still don't love how heavy the monetization is in this game, but I haven't spent $1 since beta, and I've had enough extra currency to kit out some of my characters with premium skins. And that's pretty nice for a game like this. You don't see Fortnite giving away V-Bucks, they only raise prices. But it's not all good news. In exchange for being a little looser with giving out free premium currency, events are now way harder to complete. I mentioned earlier that you can now earn event progress through regular battles, but what I didn't mention was that they vastly inflated how long it takes to make that progress. The amount of progression you get from normal matches is entirely dependent on how much time you spent in that match, encouraging you to play slow and boring, and even then, it's not nearly enough for it to feel satisfying. And challenges barely even move the needle. I get the feeling that a lot of people who play these quote-unquote free games view them as some kind of act of charity, like, oh, they're giving us the game for free, we have to be thankful for every piece of content. But no, the game is still the product, and we should still be very critical of any and all avenues of monetization that are hostile to the player. And this blows! For as generous as the folks over at Player First Games come across with some of these choices, it's abundantly clear that they are keeping a very keen eye on the economy for this game and don't want anything to be too good for the player. When every small fix takes weeks to months for it to be implemented, but a player accidentally discovering how to get slightly more fighter currency a little faster is passed within hours, it lets you know exactly where their priorities lie. Honestly, at this point, pick your poison. I can live with the grind being infinitely more insufferable if the time gating is less strict. I personally am far more likely to play a game for a couple hours on one day than for 20 minutes every day, so this system benefits me. That being said, I can very easily see why people would prefer the other way. I would love for it to be neither, but with how tight-gripped WB has been on the monetization for this thing, we're not gonna get that. And speaking of WB being unbearably greedy and money-grubbing, let's talk about the worst part of Season 1, the Rifts. Last season, Rift mode was overbearing. Uninteresting fights versus character AI with equipable gems and a challenge system designed to make you so frustrated that you spend money to skip the grind. And all of it was necessary in order to unlock Agent Smith before his fighter shop debut, causing this mode to be the ire of basically the entire audience. And this time around, it's more of the same. 4 new rifts to tackle with even more gems and gameplay modifiers, but the structure surrounding it is completely different, making the whole experience feel a lot nicer. There are no longer any character rewards locked behind the rifts. Instead, it's smaller things like Battle Pass XP, minor cosmetics, those limited currencies from the events that I was talking about earlier, and an exclusive gem that you can only level up through the challenges. And while it might sound a little backwards, I vastly prefer that they give out less meaningful rewards for playing this mode. Locking Putting Agent Smith behind the rifts last season, in combination with the impossible difficulty jumps that the later rifts had on offer, made whatever joy to be found in the wackiness of these modifiers an absolutely dreadful experience to wade through. So much so that I gave up and just bought Agent Smith at the beginning of Season 2. This way you can experience all the fun silliness of the rifts and sleep easily knowing that there's nothing you can't live without in the harder difficulties. The greatest compliment that I can give to Rift mode in its current state is that it's far more ignorable. Listen, even if this mode was perfect, which I assure you it's not, this kind of single-player fighting game grind is just not my thing. In terms of long-term fighting game investment, I much prefer to sweat it out online. Which brings us to the biggest addition of the new season, Ranked. And Ranked is great. I think some kind of ranked PvP mode for the hardcores to grind is the bare minimum a game can do nowadays to maintain an audience, and Multiversus, in their infinite wisdom, relaunched without one. Their stated reasoning for this was to iron out balance issues, which fair enough, the game did launch a little broken, but it's also not significantly better balanced now, with the strong characters still feeling way too oppressive and the weak characters still feeling pretty useless. But Ranked is here now. Matches aren't fundamentally changed in Ranked, there's no new rule sets or anything, but you get hazardless versions of stages and a number that goes up when you win, and that's enough for me to want to sink more time into the game. Weirdly enough, when trying to find a main for Ranked this time around, I actually gravitated towards Black Adam, a character I don't feel particularly strongly about at all. I swear to God, he's the sauciest character in the game, but it goes mostly unnoticed because it's Black Adam, and aside from the fact that most of the top players play him like a bitch and camp the whole round, his existence in this game serves as a harsh reminder of the time The Rock got an ego trip so big it nearly sunk a media monolith. His weird, almost unfitting existence on this roster endeared me to the character even back in the beta days before he was a high tier. Of course, it feels like everything I liked about him back then has been tuned up to 11, but I'm not just playing him cause he's good, don't you dare accuse me of that. All things considered, I had a lot of fun playing Ranked. However, I do have one tiny little nitpick. I hate that it's locked to best of 3 sets. Most fighting games have it, so after a match, you can choose whether or not you want a rematch for a best of 3, and it's kinda like an honor system. Like most people online will tell you that you're not being a girl's girl if you're not doing the best 2 out of 3, but it's usually left up to the player regardless. Multiversus does not do that. You can leave after 1 match, but if you do, the game automatically considers it a loss and deducts 2 matches worth of ranked points. And that's just mean. Listen, I like this game, but I'm not blind to its issues. A lot of these characters promote pretty toxic playstyles and call me a scrub, but sometimes I don't have the patience to sit through getting my shit curb stomped by a Tom and Jerry spamming projectiles twice. I would like the option to just leave without the game considering it 2 rounds lost. Or worse over, if you manage to win against someone who's playing really annoyingly or someone with bad internet, you have to rematch them or it's counted as a loss for you. I just think forcing you to play matches like this is a bit strange, especially when none of the other big FGC titles do it, and the fact that this game does have pretty pronounced balance issues, you'd think they'd want to avoid shining a spotlight on that where they could. But aside from all of that mess, the simple truth is that I love the core gameplay here, and Ranked is an excuse to play more of it with people who are taking it as seriously as I am. It's a net benefit for the game, 2 thumbs up. So circling back to the question I posed at the beginning of this video, did they fix Multiversus? I would say no, but it's definitely better for me. I said this last time and I'll say it again. It's a live service game, they're designed to change over time, and the things they have changed here are definitely for the better. But to call anything fixed would be generous. Here's the thing, when it comes to Multiversus, I currently sit in a privileged position. I played this game in beta. I unlocked all the characters back before they made it way harder to do so. If I was recommending this game exclusively to other people like me, I'd say check it out, but I can't guarantee that. In my opinion, Multiversus has a lot of cool ideas and really fun core gameplay, but I'm biased. The game I'm playing right now is not the game that you'll be playing, and WB doesn't want you to play the game I'm playing. They deliberately make it harder for people to progress. Free-to-play players got Beetlejuice 3 days later. The events that gave me free premium currency you would probably use to get slightly more fighter currency. Same thing with the rifts that I was perfectly fine ignoring. They're basically mandatory if you want to unlock characters faster. And this is a problem because a live service game needs a consistent stream of new players in order to keep things up and running. But it feels like the dev team only cares about people who have already put time and money into the ecosystem. And even then, there are still so many long-term problems that haven't been addressed. People are still missing missing cosmetics from the beta. The same 3 or 4 characters who have been dominating the scene since the beginning are still up there. The hitboxes are still kinda janky. Server issues, while not particularly prevalent for me, still haunt a large portion of this fan base. Look at it this way, Season 2 was step 1 of this game's fixes. It's a good start, but this is also like the 5th step 1 this game has taken. I'm losing hope that they can shape this into something that will stand the test of time. Will I keep playing Multiversus? Yeah, probably. The game's messy, I'm a messy bitch, we're made for each other. But will I keep making content about it? I doubt it. I can only say the same thing so many times. I love this game, I'm hopeful for its future, but I'm sick of waiting. I need to stop looking at it for what I know it can be and start looking at it for what it is. And what it is, at least as of right now, is not really worth talking about. See ya! Multiversus is in a weird spot right now. After an open beta that received viral acclaim and several award nominations, the game burned out, shutting down the vacant servers, promising an eventual return, only to return a year later with a much worse feeling game that needed 2 whole seasons to find some sense of stability. And heading into the game's 3rd season, the word stability was the only one on my mind. I was hoping that by now we would have smoothed things out for a tight player experience. And to an extent, I got what I wanted. It's clear that we're making our way towards some sort of status quo for the game. With 2 seasons under our belt twice, we finally have a big picture idea of what I imagine the rest of the game's lifespan will look like. And it's kind of boring. It feels like outside of character reveals, the game doesn't have any idea how to keep people invested in the long term, and that's become incredibly obvious now that we're officially out of launch territory with player numbers dropping ever so slowly. And while the game's 3rd season hasn't exactly been an uneventful one, with a load of new stages, game modes, and the possibility of a new universal mechanic that could fundamentally alter this game's core, none of it was enough to change the fact that Multiversus Season 3 feels like filler. Multiversus' 3rd season is sugar, spice, and everything nice, and features, as you could probably guess, the Powerpuff Girls. And they're probably the most noteworthy thing we have to talk about today. And how could they not be? The Powerpuff Girls have haunted this fanbase for a while, from being a longtime fan favorite potential newcomer in the beta, to being teased in one of the first trailers for the relaunch, to finally headlining their own season. The pervasive question was, how would they make them work? Are Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup separate characters like in the old Cartoon Network fighting game? Are they slightly different takes on one base character like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Injustice? Do they switch out with each other like Pokemon Trainer and Super Smash Bros? No, they all fight together on screen at once. I was positively thrilled seeing their initial trailer. I was, and still am, really impressed with the animation, how cleanly it reads, the fact that depending on the girl leading the charge, you have a slightly different moveset. It's a genuinely inspired translation of the Powerpuff Girls that showcases them as a team while still keeping their individuality. The best of both worlds. These characters were just a little before my time. When I started to be fully conscious, Cartoon Network was more in its Chowder era, but this is like the first IP to come to this game post-launch that I actually had a meaningful pre-existing relationship with. So I gotta say, I'm pretty happy to see them here. This is the first time the game's intended marketing gimmick of including pre-established IP has actually worked on me since like Steven Universe in the initial trailer. And that didn't get me hyped as much as it did morbidly curious. And now I'm here making my 4th video on the game. Isn't that crazy? In-game, the girls feel a little clunky, as does every Multiversus character. They have a very high skill ceiling. In fact, when they first released, they were basically getting 0 to deaths off everything, and it does make them a little less rewarding to play when you don't know all the sauce. I'm not the most skilled player of this game. I only really jive with one character in ranked, so the PPG didn't feel best utilized in my hands. But that doesn't stop them from being one of the most anticipated, most well-implemented, and most interesting characters added to the game. And who better to be added alongside the most exciting character than what very might be the least exciting character in this game's repertoire? Nubia. Nubia is hard to talk about without talking about the circumstances of her release, given the fact that I, and I assume many of you, had never heard of this relatively obscure piece of DC lore before her addition to Multiversus. And suddenly, here she was, unfairly thrust into being one of the 3rd season's tentpole characters. Although, if you had been tuned into the leaking community for this game, you would have had a passing familiarity with Nubia, because much like the Powerpuff Girls, Nubia has also haunted this fanbase. Back in the 2022 beta days, she was data mined as a skin for Wonder Woman. Then slowly, update after update, she got patched to have more of her own moveset. The assumption for a while was that she was going to be an Echo Fighter kind of situation, but now she's here and we know that aside from sharing a few similar moves and a similar model to Diana, she is her own full-fledged character. And since I hated Banana Guard for being a character that nobody wanted in this game with a generic spear moveset made from retooled beta assets, you might think that I would hate Nubia for being a character nobody wanted in this game with a generic spear moveset made from retooled beta assets. But she's fine. I think it all comes down to context. Banana Guard was Season 1. Coming back from the relaunch, we all wanted big names, but instead we get the silly banana from Adventure Time, and worse over, their moveset doesn't even have any references to the source material. But now we're in Season 3! The game has cruised at a moderate pace for a couple months now, the vibe is generally a lot nicer than it was back then, and Nubia, while obscure, is an actual character, and not a background gag in a legion of thousands. As far as her moveset goes, in canon, Nubia is just kind of a fighter, the queen of the Amazons, so her having a generic fighter moveset that resembles the only other Amazon on the rosters is fine. Also, I didn't know who Nubia was beforehand, so even if she's not faithful, I can't be disappointed. Listen, is she my most wanted? No. Do I like playing as her? No, not really. Do I think it's crazy that this is the closest thing to a mainstream product this character has appeared in? Absolutely. But I also firmly believe in the power of weirdo picks for fighting games. It's almost standard that crossover fighting games will have at least a few characters that you've never heard of going in, and we can discuss all day whether or not Nubia was the best choice of a character to fill that role, especially when they should be adding higher profile characters to draw more players, but I have a hard time getting worked up about it like some people in the community seem to be. Always remember that every character you've never heard of is somebody else's fringe favorite. I see people saying that DC is to Multiversus what Fire Emblem was to Smash Bros, but you never heard those Fire Emblem Smash Bros fans complaining. They were always the happiest motherfuckers. And frankly, Nubia is the only character added since the relaunch that I've actually enjoyed playing. She's not my favorite by any means, but she clicked for me in a way better than anyone who came before her. I like her moveset. The spear move where you grapple to an opponent is particularly satisfying to hit, but she's just so slow, and not like intentionally slow like Iron Giant or Jason. Nubia feels like she's playing in slow motion. I have a hard time putting it into words, but it feels like everything comes out a full second after you expect it to, and because of that, she has probably the worst game feel on the roster, which sucks because she might be fun if she wasn't constantly playing in half speed. I wanna like this character, I really do. I love to champion the small, obscure characters that no one's ever heard of. After all, I play Min Min. But regardless of how poorly thought out her inclusion was in the first place, she just doesn't quite feel right. And in a game full of characters that I like more from both a gameplay perspective and within the context of their own universe, Nubia fails to leave an impression. And I imagine a lot of you feel the same way. Almost everything added in Multiversus Season 3 follows the same precedent set by our new roster additions. Remarkable highs and low lows. For instance, we have new stages. The delightfully charming Midnight Showing from the Gremlins, a destroyed variant of Townsville with a tiny platform in the middle, both with distinct visual elements that clearly had a lot of effort put into them, and alongside them, a handful of ugly stages ripped straight from the game's Rift mode. I get why they did it. It gets more mileage out of these assets originally made for Rift mode. They even made some of the sillier game modes from the Rifts playable in PvP with the Wacky Weekends queue, but man, these stages are butt ugly. I could ignore this if they were used exclusively for the random mini games or for the Rifts, but seeing them next to the actual stages leaves something to be desired. They finally added something substantial to the perk system after leaving it basically stagnant since launch, giving Garnet a new signature perk, and this is super neat. I like this idea of promoting newer playstyles for older characters without a significant rework. But then they randomly decided that the Last Stand perk was overpowered in its current state, so rather than nerf it, they removed it from the game completely. And I'm doubly annoyed about this one because the perk was so good that I had it equipped with all my guys, and instead of removing the perk from my loadouts, they just reset all of my loadouts that had the perk equipped, which was all of them, so I had to spend a while fixing that. The new events were fun thematically, and the associated cosmetics feel like they had a lot more effort put into them than last season's, but they also imposed a lot of new restrictions on how much event currency you can gain, and introduced a new elusive rarity to certain cosmetics to further promote the fear of missing out. I even gave a good faith attempt to do the rifts again after dismissing them completely in Season 2. And in case you were curious, they're not better. There are more silly gimmicks at play, but the difficulty jumps are still atrocious, the grind for gem XP is still insane, and they still have really weird restrictions around what characters you have to play in order to bait you into spending money. Which, small tangent, but in the third rift, they have a section of missions that can only be completed by using a skin from the Hypergalactic event, an event that I had to miss, so I couldn't play these missions. Last season, I could have mitigated these problems because all of the event currencies could be exchanged for each other, but for some reason, they got rid of that here. And it's like, this is one of those changes that only serves to make the game worse for the player. It may be a small thing, but it's cumulative, you know? Like this in combination with new characters coming out 3 days later for free-to-play players, the higher amount of filler items like gem XP in the battle pass, putting limits on how many items you can get with the event currency, and the fact that there are now permanent indicators on the character select screen for which characters have skins you can buy to get double XP sucks the soul out of the game a bit. It's been really upsetting to watch these unexpectedly kind gestures like free premium currency or being able to get event progress from matches against AI get scaled back more and more with every new update. To me, it feels like they want the kudos for doing nice things only to slowly peel it back and hope no one will notice that it's almost as bad as launch again. The rifts are still not my thing. I'm not built for this difficulty curve. The fact that we jump from not very challenging at all to none of my attacks feel like they're doing anything and every match takes 5 minutes because of it is crazy. Want my advice? Play Iron Giant in co-op with a dummy account, and because the dummy account will die frequently, you can spam the transformation and pray. Although I'm hesitant to talk about any of the random workarounds I've come up with to make the live service grind less miserable, lest they somehow see this video and patch it out like they have so many of the other smaller exploits the community has found. If they nerf Iron Giant in Rift mode, you'll have me to blame. But we'll also have soft confirmation that they're watching. In which case, hi Tony, I want Ted Lasso, Steven Universe in the pink jacket, and Ruby Rose. Make it happen. But by far the biggest new talking point for Multiversus' third season was shields. New to the game this season was the testing grounds, a queue meant exclusively to feel out new features that the development team may or may not be adding. And for its debut, we have Super Smash Bros. Style shields proposed as a universal mechanic. And I don't like this. Multiversus has a lot of cheese that characters tend to take advantage of, and it feels like rather than address any of that on a case-by-case basis, they're just hoping shields will be a band-aid solution on what is otherwise a pretty spam-heavy experience. And I know that all of this is purely hypothetical, because for all we know, shields aren't ever actually going to be a thing, but at what point is this just a different game? I loved how Multiversus played when it launched. It was unwieldy, sure, but the way the characters moved with the constant dodging and the breakneck pace of it all really gave the game its own identity in the gameplay department, something I think other platform fighters struggle with. A lot of games fall into the trap of trying to be a Smash Bros. Alternative, more specifically a Melee alternative, but the thing is, Melee players only really play Melee. I've been in this community long enough to see tons of games try and be the Melee messiah away from big bad Nintendo, and every time they get hyped up for like a week before the community just goes back to their one game. And despite my criticisms, I think part of the reason Multiversus ended up being one of the more long-term successful attempts at this idea is because of those differences in the core gameplay. Don't get me wrong, I think it's cool that they're still experimenting with major game mechanics. I like that they added teching last season, but the fact that this game is still debating adding shields years out from its open beta, which was months out from the playtest I was initially playing, it paints a picture that there isn't really a coherent vision for this game's gameplay. Characters, skins, we more or less know that they have those on lock, but the actual game those characters will be implemented into, that's a work in progress. And that kinda scares me. Think of how many people we lost from beta to relaunch because of how the gameplay was reworked. People are still up in arms about things being too slow, and we're debating adding shields? When did shields become part of this conversation? Let's go back to the movement. I find the game's current state perfectly playable. I'm not amazingly offended by the slowdown of the beta's gameplay, nor do I think shields are an inherently bad idea, but can we fucking stick to something? Relearning muscle memory from the beta was annoying enough, and now I very possibly am gonna gonna have to learn how to make shields work. It's times like this where I wonder, what exactly were they doing during the off-season? Because lest we forget, Multiversus was offline for the better part of a year to implement fixes from the beta. This is the supposed final product. Why does it still feel like a beta? The state of Multiversus has just been so unexciting as of late, but there is hope on the horizon, because Warner Bros. Just announced that Multiversus has been massively underperforming, like $100 million in the hole underperforming. And while I have my suspicions on how realistic their expectations were in the first place, given that this is the WB we're talking about, this could be the start of something big. Right as this news began to hit the internet, Multiversus announced their plans for Season 4, a longer season featuring 2 fan-favorite characters, reworks to character unlocks, a new mode with a load of customization options, 2 new battle passes, more high-effort events, 2 new stages for existing franchises, and all of it housed inside a roadmap, something us fans have been requesting for a while. I have reservations about being too hopeful. 2 battle passes on paper seems like it'll be messy, and a lot of this other stuff feels like the same things we get every season, except this time told to us in a new way, but it's clear that player first games isn't going down without a fight. And I'm kind of excited to see what a desperate PFG operates like. Marceline and Raven are 2 of the most popular characters from their respective shows, and those shows are cultural juggernauts in my corner of the internet. This will turn heads, and if the fighter road makes new characters more easily unlockable, that could mean a strong influx of new players. However, this goes both ways. If they announce that this Supreme Raven design is in the game on November 12th, and all the goth girlies log in only to find out that Raven's only available for premium currency and she'll be unlockable for free on the 15th, it'll be a disaster. The game's biggest weakness since Season 1 has been how unforgiving it is unless you devote all your time to it. And while they have made small steps towards fixing it with things like being able to unlock characters much cheaper through event currency, it's still a mind-numbing grind for free-to-play players. I'm skeptical, it feels like they've been skirting the line for a while, but if there was ever a time to bend over backwards for an audience, it would be now. It's make or break time, Multiversus. I'm rooting for you, please don't disappoint me, and we'll talk again when Marceline is playable. See ya! Multiversus is a failure. About a month ago now, Warner Bros. Revealed that Multiversus was a large factor in a $100 million loss for the company's gaming efforts. And looking at the past couple years, this wasn't very surprising to find out. Despite the game's open beta launch going viral, hitting a peak of over 150,000 players, which is insane by platform fighter standards, developer Player First Games has been unable to keep up that hype, taking the game offline about a year later and then relaunching in May of 2024. And throughout the relaunch's first 3 seasons, there were several questionable decisions made that drastically changed the Multiversus environment. A complete rework of the gameplay from beta, with even more reworks to come, a much more strict live service grind, and a general anti-consumer sentiment that even the game's very frequent content updates have a hard time covering up. And unfortunately, Multiversus' 4th season, titled Midnight Misfits, has no interest in fixing any of these problems, delivering yet another commendable chunk of new content starring 2 fan-favorite additions, while also making what was already kind of a broken, messy grind into even more of a broken, messy grind. Let's talk about Multiversus Season 4. As usual for Multiversus, the new characters are the highlight of the season. We have Teen Titans Raven and Marceline the Vampire Queen from Adventure Time. And I gotta say, I loved playing as both of them. Raven is a zoner with a lot of slow-moving projectiles, but her main gimmick is her Raven. She can send out this bird and use special moves wherever it ends up, allowing the player to do a lot of fun juggles with their enemies. And she gets a rage boost when she takes enough damage. In a lot of ways, she feels like a combination of several characters I already like. The projectile game of Black Adam, the split character gimmick of Steven Universe, and the ability to survive longer at higher percentages makes my reckless playstyle a little more forgiving to work around, especially since they removed the Last Stand perk in Season 3. Meanwhile, Marceline's whole thing is getting small, quick amounts of chip damage in before using her slow-moving bat specials to finish off enemies, and she has a whole load of tools at her disposal. I think Marceline might be the character with the most individual attacks she can do, and it makes her feel so versatile in motion. These guys are both great. People who have been keeping up with this series will know that I've struggled to find characters I've really enjoyed playing, but I'm happy to report back and say that these 2 instantly clicked for me. They're animated well, their movesets fit in nicely with the source material, and as a bonus, both of them were highly requested characters, some of the most popular from their individual series, and even more importantly, they were characters I actually cared about before this game, so I am so unbelievably happy to welcome them to the roster. I just wish more people got to play as them. Unlike the first 3 seasons, the headlining character is no longer included in the Battle Pass. Instead, much like Nubia and Beetlejuice before her, Raven was dropped for the premium currency Gleamium day and date of the new season and available through the Fighter Road 3 days later. More on that to come. I like how they're no longer locking characters behind the Battle Pass. In the past, if you didn't buy it, you had to wait till the end of the season, which is around 60 days, to unlock characters like Jason or the Powerpuff Girls, and that is really egregious, but I don't think they thought this through properly either. Tier 1 of the Battle Pass was a skin for Raven, so hypothetically, if you were someone who had just enough Gleamium left over from the last season to purchase the new Battle Pass, the first thing you would get is for a character you don't have, and if you want that character, you either have to spend money or wait 3 days. This feels like yet another way to try and get you to put down money. Like you're gonna have this crazy cosmetic burning a hole in your pocket for 3 days before you can even start the grind for them. A cosmetic that will give you double XP later in the season, so you might as well purchase their starter bundle. And if you're like me and have leftover character tickets from the beta, they make you go into a different place now to unlock them. In Season 3 you could just do it in the character select screen, but now you have to do it in the fighter shop, buried towards the bottom of the store tab. And it's like, why did you add more steps to this? Is the amount of people who will choose to buy it with real money right that second at the slightest inconvenience that much higher to justify hiding the option from people who gave you money already? Because in order to get the character tickets in the first place, you have to have purchased one of the Founders Packs, which I did. For $100. I feel like I say this every season, but the pushy monetization that Multiversus has on offer is so gross. I get it, it's a free-to-play game. You need money for more content, server upkeep, what have you. But I hate constantly being reminded of that fact. A good game incentivizes spending by being a good game first. A desperate game does whatever this is. I've never seen a game so forward and heavy-handed with its monetization. They put up all these guardrails and hoops to jump through, and I have to ask, are you making enough money from this to justify how much it hurts the experience for your dedicated player base? Is the short-term cash worth the inevitable death by paper cuts that every Multiversus player is destined to experience? And outside of this headache with the new characters, it's hard to ignore that the Battle Pass offerings are also just far worse this go-around. They attempted to reuse cosmetics from the past, there are even more filler items like Gem XP and Toast, and barring a couple exceptions, most of these outfits overlap with the event skins. It feels like they already had the lower effort event skins done, but then had to scramble to fill out the Battle Pass, so they just threw a couple of those in, and even the better looking ones are victim to an incredibly obvious lower bar of quality. And that's even harder to ignore because there are now 2 of them. That's right, for some reason they decided to give this season 2 smaller Battle Passes that each last around half the season instead of one big one. And I say big one, but it's really like a normal one, or in Multiversus' case, a smaller than average one. When people first saw this, they, perhaps optimistically, thought that it was a way for them to give us more cosmetics. But I did the math, and not so. Season 1 offered 9 skins, 9 ring out animations, 3,300 fighter currency, and a whole new character for 950 Gleamium. Season 4 offers 9 skins, 8 ring out animations, no fighter currency, and no character for 1,600 Gleamium. Less rewards for almost double the price. To be completely fair, they did lower the prices of the individual battle passes to 800 Gleamium each, which is cheaper than it used to be, and you can still earn back all the currency through the pass, but for around half of the rewards per pass, I would expect more than a 16% discount. And you may have noticed that I said Season 4 offered no fighter currency, and that's because Season 4 actually did a major revamp to how you unlock new characters. And would you believe that everything we've been talking about so far is just the tip of the iceberg? The biggest problem Multiversus has had since relaunch is how difficult it is for a new player to get into the game. So when they announced that they were completely reworking the method for unlocking new characters from a grind for currency into something called the Fighter Road, an experience-based system that would allow for more natural progression, I was hopeful. I thought that they were listening to us. I've said since the beginning of this whole debacle that the best thing Multiversus could do to maintain a player base is make it easier for people to unlock the characters that they want to play. Especially with online favorites like Marceline now being here, removing the barriers to access these characters would be the best thing for drawing new faces to the game. Makes sense, right? So would someone please tell me why the fighter road only adds more roadblocks to unlocking characters while not undoing any of the actual grind that people were complaining about? Instead of grinding for fighter currency, you are now grinding for fighter XP. A normal PvP match rewards 100 XP, 50 more if you win, and almost all of the fighters require 15,000 of the stuff to unlock them, so that equals out to at least 100 games per character. And honestly, this isn't the worst. But then you add in the fact that you can't choose which characters you want to unlock. The fighter road is a tiered progression system, with every tier giving you a choice between 3 characters. You start with Wonder Woman, Jake or Bugs Bunny, then Batman, Tom and Jerry, and Garnet, then whoever you didn't choose out of the first 3, then whoever you didn't choose from the next 3, and you continue in this obtuse pattern for 30 tiers. You can't just select anyone from the roster. No matter what, you'll have to play at least 2,900 games to start the grind for Raven. This is bad. If an average match of Multiversus takes around 5 minutes, that's 241 hours of in-game time. Over 10 days! They try to make it better by giving bonus XP through trying new modes, leveling up characters, putting fighter XP in the battle pass, and giving you a bonus if you're wearing certain skins, but stuff like that requires you to already be invested in the game. If someone new was to hop into this before they had access to any of that, there would be a grind so hilariously bad in front of them that I wouldn't blame them if they just uninstalled right there on the spot. And on top of how insanely slow this is, you can't bank progress with this system. Fighter currency may have been slow, but at least you're always passively earning some. I've never used fighter currency once, but I've somehow accumulated 42,000 of the stuff just through playing the game. But if you have all the fighters unlocked already, fighter XP just gets converted to battle pass XP, meaning that if you have quests or what have you that reward fighter XP, it's literally in your best interest to avoid playing the game until there's new characters, because otherwise you'll just be wasting your time. Fighter Road doesn't meaningfully change anything. It only makes things even worse for free-to-play players and rewards the whales. Only people already deep in Multiversus hell like me will benefit from faster battle pass completion. And people who spend money on the new characters will unlock more characters faster because for some reason Marceline and Raven give you missions to obtain extra fighter XP, something that will be completely useless if you unlock them as the Fighter Road intends you to do. We might be too far gone at this point, but I genuinely think the best thing the game could do right now is abandon the idea of paying for characters completely. New characters are the biggest form of advertising this game has. Raven and her fantastic Multiversus redesign is the most I've seen people talk about this game since relaunch. If we want more players, they need to be able to get their hands on them. Especially since the multiverse gimmick is targeting people from across fandoms. There are probably Raven stans who don't care about multiverses or fighting games at all, but would be willing to pop in for a quick game or two if they could play as her. And maybe based off of those 2 games, we have a new fan on our hands. I initially picked up this game because I saw Steven Universe in the trailer. If they had made it so I had to grind 1,000 matches to unlock him, I would have never bothered. This system is crazy bad. And keep in mind, most hardcore players likely unlocked most of the roster back when it was easier in the beta or slightly easier in seasons 1 through 3. This serves exclusively to punish new players. Dedicated players are more likely to spend money on a game anyways. I think it would be smarter in the long haul to try and attract more players, a fraction of whom will go above and beyond, rather than expecting everyone who is already going above and beyond to go in even harder. So much of this game's seasonal content revolves around this huge roster. You have to do battle pass quests with different characters, rewards for events are character-specific cosmetics, and the rifts require you to work around all these different character tags, but you can hardly engage with these systems at all unless you have like 2/3 of the roster unlocked. And worse over, in terms of cosmetics, it's a guessing game as to who will get what. Velma and Black Adam have gotten multiple Battle Pass skins in a row, most of the post-relaunch cast only has 1 or 2 non-recolor skins, and a good chunk of the roster has some kind of model issue or broken texture that would disincentivize people from buying cosmetics for them. Like the Steven Universe characters have never looked right in this game. And having to unlock them all separately and make all these different value judgments about who will be the most worthwhile for whatever reason is an exercise I can't imagine the average player wants to go through. Sometimes you just want to play your guy. They recently added a character bundle to the shop to try and mitigate this issue. $50 worth of Gleamium to unlock the entire roster pre-Raven, with the price going down if you already own some. But again, we need more players, and I can't imagine anyone on the fence about Multiversus is going to put down the price of a used copy of Smash Ultimate for a game that was just reported to be a major cause in a $100 million loss for Warner Bros. But that's just my 2 cents. And it's like, I want this game to succeed, but I don't want them to do it like this. I've started to see a lot of people in the community pop up and say things like, oh, you better be spending money on Multiversus or you're part of the problem. You gotta put your money where your mouth is. And like, if that's what it's come to, I want this game to fail. When this game does shutter its doors, any and all failings will be entirely on the staff who makes choices like putting all these roadblocks in place for new players, announcing the hitboxes and netcode are fixed for every update despite those being a consistent issue, and fundamentally changing the core gameplay from beta to relaunch. It won't be the fault of little Jimmy the Multiversus fan who didn't buy enough skins. I get supporting what you like, but at a certain point, the game has to earn it. Multiversus earned $100 out of me in the beta, and it feels crazy and stupid to say that now, but evaluating how much mileage I've gotten out of the game, I feel safe saying that. But the game has not once enticed me to drop a cent on it since then. I haven't felt this burned by a game that I once loved since my very messy and public breakup with Overwatch. And hell, even Overwatch eventually learned that you can't do the whole characters in the battle pass thing. They gave up on trying to sell characters separately earlier this year, and its competitor, Marvel Rivals, marketed itself on the promise that all characters would be available to all players for free. I think we should be taking some notes here. And changes like this don't only hurt the game in the long term, they hurt the game's perception. The fact that Multiversus has reinvented how to unlock characters 3 different times in 2 years and every time it got worse is horrible. It paints a really bad picture when major game mechanics can just come and go like this. And on that, let's talk about shields. Last season, Multiversus introduced shields as an experimental possible new game mechanic, and I thought that it wasn't a good idea because the game has barely figured out how to make the mechanics it's had for years work, and I thought reinventing the core gameplay 6 months in wasn't going to be a very feasible solution to the balance issues the game was facing. Lo and behold, a month later, shields were added to the game permanently, as if to spite me specifically. One of my pet peeves in games like this is when they implement a mechanic that you know was only added because they couldn't figure out how to balance around something else. People keep spamming moves. Instead of figuring out how to make those moves less powerful, let's just throw in shields so now you can block the spamming. I can't help but roll my eyes whenever I see a big, sweeping, potentially very divisive change to a game's core like this, especially for a game like Multiversus where they're struggling to maintain players as it is. It's clear that there's no vision for high-level Multiversus gameplay, and they're just letting the dominoes fall where they will, listening to the players who champion the idea of shields because they want this game to play like every other platform fighter, and I just think that's a cowardly way to handle game balance. And outside of my personal thoughts on how we got here, in execution, it just doesn't feel right. Super Smash Bros.' shields work in a sort of rock, paper, scissors triangle. If someone's attacking, you shield. If someone's shielding, you grab. And if someone's trying to grab, you attack. But Multiversus doesn't have grabs, at least not universally, so instead you get a shield break attack, which is just an enhanced version of a move your character already has, so it doesn't choreograph super well. Also, the characters who do have grabs can use those against shields, so this universal mechanic and what works against it is all weirdly character specific, making balancing even harder. The animation for shielding looks odd, and unlike Smash Bros, the shield doesn't shrink, so you have to monitor a tiny shield health bar beneath the battle. And I may be a little biased because I didn't like the idea of shields in the first place, but I think it just serves to make this game a little more convoluted to anyone new coming in. Plus, adding shields doesn't really undo the strength of spamming dodges, at least not at my admittedly low ranked level, so you hop into games and you barely see people using shields in the first place, and you begin to wonder why they even bothered. If they were going to add shields, I think they should have cooked a little longer. The conspiracy that I've been seeing is that shields were rushed out the door so that they could be used at the Platfight Gaming Championships, an event for, as you could probably guess, platform fighters. It's clear that the devs were really hoping this would be a big event for the game. They were running a Multiversus tournament, they set up a demo build of Marceline at their booth, and they even had in-game cosmetics celebrating the event. And in an ironic twist, this attempt to capture more platform fighter fans by making Multiversus closer to the other ones didn't even get a chance to work because one of the only major competitive tournaments that this game has ever been featured in immediately voted to not use shields because people had been practicing without them. What should have been a major symbiotic slam dunk for the game ended up as yet another controversy because they decided to radically change the core gameplay for no reason. They couldn't even push it back to the Marceline update. They had to make it go live right before the event. To bring up the Overwatch comparison again, I feel very similarly to Shields that I do 5v5. Which is to say, I get why they did it, and it very well might be better for the long-term health of the game, we'll just have to wait and see. But right now, in this moment, I feel like it only serves to alienate people who liked the game as it was, chasing an audience that has already long abandoned us. People accuse me of being a Multiversus hater, and I get it, I talk a lot of smack, but I do want this game to succeed. It just feels disingenuous to only talk about the good stuff when the game is fundamentally ripping itself apart at the seams. Like, yeah, the new stages are cool, but the season also just broke so much. Like when Raven came out, my game kept crashing, and then I found out it was only when I was using Raven's down special, but only sometimes, and then I found out that the perk I was using was the reason I kept disconnecting, and while they had removed it from being equipped, they didn't remove it from my account, so they just gave me a button to crash the game, but only sometimes. Eventually this was fixed, but the devs were radio silent about if/when this perk would return, or what even prompted its removal on any of the game's socials, despite the fact that this specific perk was a topic of note during the official stream hyping up the new season. You'd just watch the stream and it wouldn't be in the game. Arena mode is cute, taking 8 teams and throwing them into a series of random PvP matches with the option to buy upgrades between rounds, a roguelike twist on Multiversus that I actually had quite a good time with, but it rewards prestige currency, so the devs have taken this as an excuse to inflate prestige prices because now you can grind for it. Everything comes with an asterisk nowadays, and despite how much I love the core gameplay, I can't ignore that, and it's gotten to the point where I now expect the worst from this game. Like, I could talk about how my game glitched and made me spend Gleamium on Gem XP and WB support refusing to refund me that cost, or the fact that they broke the game-ending victory screen for like half the season. There was no animation anymore, it just appeared. But things like that don't surprise me anymore. So many things are getting worse with no actual fixes on the horizon. Silence from developers is now just the norm, and I'm watching more and more people in the fanbase get either blackpilled about the game's future, giving up entirely, or putting up walls and becoming defensive shills, and it's really sad to watch these once prominent figureheads lose their love for the game like this. If it wasn't incredibly clear by my tone throughout this video, I think the writing is on the wall for Multiversus. I think this deep into the game's lifespan, expecting anything to change in a meaningful way is coping. And while I'm happy to go down with the ship, it's been frustrating to watch this game squander its potential so heavily. As this comment from the last video so elegantly put it, if this was any other game, the community would just leave it to rot. Multiversus was, and to an extent still is, special. People love this game, and while I think the community can be a little misguided in how they show that love, the passion is there. I want this game to succeed, but it's not going to succeed like this. There needs to be some major course correction. Course correction that I thought would take place in Season 4, and we might be out of time to put things back together. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was recently canceled, a game that a couple weeks ago was in a very similar position to Multiversus. This isn't me baiting, this isn't a hate video, this is a plea. I'm on my knees here. If the game makes it to Season 5, we can't be doing things like adding rifts with loot boxes or re-implementing the live system that everyone dragged you for. I would be shocked if this didn't blow up in your face somehow. And I feel like the devs know this. They probably won't say it out loud for fairly obvious reasons, but I watch those Into the Verse streams. I'm an empath. I can tell the energy behind closed doors is dire, and I don't want to direct any unnecessary negativity to them. God knows they probably hate this shit as much as we do, but something needs to change, and I'm not sure if it can. Season 5 just got delayed to February. Last time there was a delay for a new Multiversus season, the game was taken offline. I think taking this as a sign of the game's end times is a little hyperbolic, but it's definitely not a good sign either, and in combination with Season 4's messy handling, I can see why people think this game isn't going to be around much longer. Where do I land on this issue? Girl, I don't know. I want to believe there's still hope, but based on certain character teasers, we have a pretty solid idea of who our next fighters might be, and barring maybe one, none of them have the star power that Raven and Marceline held. I like Daffy Duck, but he isn't gonna turn heads like they did. I think we might have missed our chance. But for as long as they keep making updates, I'll keep being here to talk about them. If nothing else, you can count on that much, because unlike Warner Bros., I know how to keep my promises. Next video is Best Games 2024. See ya! Multiversus is shutting down. At the end of January, after the game's latest season was delayed, developer Player First Games logged onto social media to inform the masses that Multiversus' 5th season would be its last. And I have to admit, I'm shocked to see it go so soon. After a wildly successful open beta, Multiversus would go offline to relaunch as a full game in May of 2024. But with this relaunch came a whole host of issues that the game would never truly be able to outgrow. Through 4 seasons of predatory monetization, insufferably long grinds to unlock basic content, and a consistently anti-consumer business model that made the game a hard sell for anyone not already playing, Multiversus both failed to bring any new faces to the game and continually alienated those of us who stuck with it through poorly thought out reinventions to the game's core. And it's clear that the money has dried up, with this latest update being the last piece of content to hit the game and servers set to go offline on May 30th, meaning that this game will have been online in its full state for just over 1 year. The story of Multiversus has always been one of missed potential and developer greed. If you could navigate your way around the live service nightmare, there was good stuff here, but that was always a tall order, and that legacy of inconsistency continues into the game's final season. With the shutdown looming over the horizon, Season 5 shows more than ever that this game, in the right hands, could have been something really special, delivering on what a lot of fans have been asking for a while also leaving a lot to be desired for the supposed final state of the game. And if this is it, what does that mean for us? Is Multiversus finally worth playing again? Should you reinstall so that you can keep the party going once the servers go offline? Well, for what is probably going to be the last time, let's talk about it. Logging into Multiversus Season 5, things aren't as different as you might expect with the game soon to be sunsetted. Aside from a couple things being available for free and in-game purchases now being disabled, it feels like business as usual. We have new characters, new stages, a new ranked season, a whole new battle pass for you to complete, new events slated for the upcoming months, and those of us with leftover character tickets from the beta that we never got to use properly can now exchange them for the game's premium currency, Gleamium. And with that Gleamium, you can purchase almost every cosmetic from seasons past. Almost. Even in Shutdown, I guess you're not getting those elusive skins. I find the fact that the cosmetics are still locked behind Gleamium, even now, kind of annoying. I don't know if it was necessarily realistic, but I figured this game was going to do something similar to Marvel's Avengers. When they shut down, they gave away all the skins for free, and I thought it was the least they could do. Here, well, I hope you already had enough Gleamium banked away for whatever you wanted before the game goes offline, cause you can't buy more. It's been confirmed that they're not unlocking cosmetics for the game's eventual offline version, only characters, so for anyone who may want to get more skins before this game goes into post-shutdown purgatory, they're gonna have to grind it out using these loot boxes that randomly give out older cosmetics and any of the game's various currencies. And it's a similar story with a lot of the newer skins, which are unlocked exclusively through the PvE rogue rifts, which have limited daily attempts, obscene jumps in difficulty, and once again randomly give you your rewards in the form of loot boxes. Even in death, Multiversus is making you grind. This probably has something to do with character tickets now giving out Gleamium, and the fact that they never delivered enough characters for people to use all of those tickets properly, so it could potentially be some kind of legal issue if they didn't give anything in return, and what else can you give in return? But that means offline versions of this game will forever have cosmetics limited to what you purchased before shutdown, and with the amount of cosmetics this game has and how insanely expensive it was to get most of them, it's a shame so many are going to be lost to the digital ether. I was kinda hoping that everything going down the tubes would mean the removal of a lot of the walls put in place in prior seasons, but everything is more or less the same. There's a couple boosts and some freebies, but if you didn't come into Season 5 with a lot of things already unlocked, it's still gonna be pretty heinous to try and catch up to celebrate the end times. And that's so lame! It would have been nice for this game to go out on a high note. If they gave out all the characters for free as a last hurrah, I guarantee you a lot more people would be willing to check out the game in a post-mortem kind of of way. And maybe that curiosity could push more people into putting some time in to create a dedicated offline scene so this game's legacy doesn't die forever. And I'm disappointed to see that we couldn't even get something that basic, but maybe that's on me for getting my hopes up. However, there is one thing that is completely free and available to play with right out the gate with this new update, and that is our new characters. Aquaman and Lola Bunny are the headlining characters for Multiversus final season. And personally, I am gooped, gagged, and positively betribbled that Multiversus went with the weird, sexy Lola Bunny from the original Space Jam as opposed to any of her newer incarnations. The fact that they kept the exposed midriff, curvy body, and fuck me eyes with this basketball-based moveset when this character is almost completely different nowadays is a choice so crazy that I almost have to respect it. But it's hard to ignore that character choices like this are why the game shut down. There's a lack of perspective here. Like, why are we basing Lola Bunny off of the old 90s movie that is basically only remembered in modern times for being extremely bad when there's a pretty beloved newer version of this character with more personality that the younger folks who actually have the time to spend grinding out this game would probably feel more fondness for? And that's not to discredit either of them in-game. Both of these guys have incredibly well-realized and interesting kits at their disposal, but neither of them are what I would consider heavy hitters from their individual franchises. Yeah, maybe we get a lot of Looney Tunes in DC because they're easy to license or whatever, but in what world is Lola Bunny, based specifically on Space Jam 1996, the next natural addition for a Looney Tunes character? And similarly, it's a well-known joke that Aquaman is the worst member of the Justice League, and he's also the 9th DC character to come to this game, the 4th since relaunch, and the 3rd that doesn't make a lot of sense. And obviously, this is all just pointless semantics now, given that these character choices are essentially parting gifts from the developers to us, and I guess it's perfectly on the mark for the last character choices this game gets to be just as inconsistent and head-scratching as before, but knowing that this is it bums me out a little, especially because right now is the best the game has ever been. For Multiversus' final season, they really took the months of criticism to heart and drastically changed the core combat, increasing the pace and giving almost every character on the roster significant changes that result in the game overall looking and feeling a lot better. Just look at this footage compared to the combos they were showing off before relaunch. This is the first time in a while that this game has actually looked enticing for people who weren't already invested in it. And I don't know what the plan was for this game's balance long term, if there even was one, but it really stinks that they managed to fix the gameplay at the exact same time they announced the shutdown. But I guess that means that monkey's paw I wished on to fix Multiversus must have worked. Allegedly, before the shutdown was finalized, Season 5 was going to be a last-ditch effort to save the game. And if that were still the case, they might have had a fighting chance with these combat changes. But obviously, that's all been thrown out the window. Now that we know things are going down the tubes, despite all of these improvements, player retention is the worst it's ever been. And this circles back to what I was saying earlier about just letting everything be free for the last couple months. If purchases are disabled and you're not making any money from this anyways, what's the harm in letting people have some fun with it? I've been seeing a lot of people with a lot more followers than little old me say that the game looks great right now, but they probably won't play it because you still have to unlock the roster exclusively through a horrendous grind. And if I was someone behind the scenes who cared even a little bit about this game having a legacy, I would be throwing this content into people's hands. Brand intrigue has never been Multiversus' problem. It's always been the grind, the time gates, the paywalls, and I've been saying this since the beginning. And even though there's no direct monetary incentive, I think for everyone involved, the dev team, any potential new players, and the folks who have stuck it through the mess that was relaunch, this content deserves to be in people's hands before the game goes offline. And on that, I should mention that there are a couple efforts to save the game. I know the fanbase on Twitter has people trying to trend hashtags and sign petitions, as well as a couple fan projects starting up preservation efforts, and while I'm not sure if any of these will actually amount to anything, it does show that still, there are people who genuinely love this game. And I'm one of them. A game with the franchise power and love of Super Smash Bros, but with a focus on online play and consistent updates, is a dream come true for a lot of people. Yeah, it was never going to be as big or as groundbreaking as the Nintendo Classic, but similar games with worse gameplay have managed to find a comfortable niche for themselves. It could have worked if they hadn't been so greedy with its monetization. There's been a lot of talk about the behind-the-scenes situation with Multiversus, including rumors of terrible workplace conditions at Player First Games, and the game director supposedly being very difficult to work with. But honestly, it's a lot of he said, she said, and nothing I was able to dig up confirmed anything more substantially. So what I will say is that it's clear to me that this game's development was a mess. Even outside of any comments made by former staff, the game was routinely broken, with stuff like UI for events disappearing, quests becoming bugged for certain players, character balance never quite being where it should be, and the reinventions of core mechanics like the fighter road and shields that got pushed out in a seemingly unfinished state, all painting a picture of a studio that doesn't have its priorities straight. This studio's first title was a live service rival to one of the most polished and well-regarded franchises in the gaming world. From the outset, this was going to be an uphill battle for an inexperienced team, and the fact that the beta instantly blew up and created expectations that the full game never ended up living up to probably resulted in a very messy and frustrating work environment. And to an extent, I get the want to witch hunt. It's hard to look at the people in charge of this mess and feel anything but contempt. In the case of games like Concord, Anthem, or Avengers, it's clear that foundationally, they were a bad idea. But Multiversus was different. There was something here. 150,000 people thought so, and it was frustrating to watch the powers that be consistently choose the wrong option at every single crossroads. Character choices that the developers were passionate about but didn't really do much for fans of the game, more and more roadblocks put in place for free-to-play players, a PvE mode that felt like an afterthought that was the only real motivator to log in day to day. It all became incredibly grating on the player base. And it's not even like I'm only realizing this with the benefit of hindsight. I've been saying this for months, and people told me that I was just a hater, or that Steam player charts didn't matter because there were so many more players on consoles, or that character picks didn't matter because they were saving the truly hyped characters for later. And it turns out, all of those were in fact incredibly critical errors because the game is dead now. And whether this is ultimately the fault of Player First Games mismanagement, the greedy suits at Warner Bros. Constantly wanting more and more returns while everything they own slowly turns to dust, or if this is just another byproduct of the ongoing enshittification of the games industry that we are currently living through, doesn't matter. Only the final product does. And that final product turned out to be a mediocre microtransaction simulator that only served to further tank the reputation of Warner Bros. Games. And now this is the last game a lot of these characters are going to see before they get relegated to Fortnite cameo hell. Cause realistically, that's the only future these guys have. Warner Bros. Is a sinking ship. They're canceling projects left and right, shutting down studios, delisting already released games, and the only thing they have ever known to do in times of crisis is mash all of their existing IP together. And now they're not even in a place to do that in their own title. I've already seen people celebrating the death of Multiversus because now Sub-Zero can be in Fortnite, and that's cool for Fortnite fans, but I don't think seeing my character's lifeless corpse forcefully strung onto a pre-made rig to perform the exact same stock animations every Fortnite character does is nearly as exciting as what a game built for them could deliver. And that's coming from someone who spent money on Fortnite like last week. I may have my beef with the developers of this game, as everyone should for a fumble this generational, but I think what a lot of people are missing with this whole situation is that this is probably the last time we're gonna be seeing something like this. Multiversus is dead, Nick All-Star Brawl is dead, Brawlhalla only does its crossovers through skins, and Super Smash Bros. Is a once per console generation event. And while there are some pretty good alternatives in the gameplay department, none of them have the brand power something like this did. And you can say what you want about this cynical leveraging of intellectual property for money. God knows I've done my fair share of complaining, but when handled properly, stuff like this can be really fun. I've always liked these crossover games. Even if I wasn't a particularly big fan of a lot of the stuff on the roster, they provide windows into new worlds. And when it worked, Multiversus was great at this. I've never watched the Iron Giant, but his kit quickly became one of my favorites in the game. And then you find out almost every single one of these moves is sourced directly from random bits in the movie, and it all becomes incredibly charming. There's a passion there, and that passion extends to the entire game. There's so much love put behind these movesets. This roster has had its fair share of stumbles, but even in the worst of times, I've consistently come away impressed by how well these characters have been translated into the platform fighter setting. Every character had so much going on, so many different tools at their disposal, so many cooldowns and conditional abilities to worry about, even more so through customization with perks. And yeah, that stuff may have made online matches a bit of a mess, but it was a mess that was addictive. Sweaty Multiversus matches were pure chaotic fun. When the stars aligned and everything worked as intended, there was an energy to the game unlike anything else in the space. And that's an energy I'm gonna miss. And I've struggled for a while to fully articulate my thoughts thoughts on this topic because yes, Multiversus was bad. There were a lot of bad choices made. Bad monetization, bad graphics, bad balance. It was objectively bad and deserves its fate, and no one will deny you that. But I'm sad that it's all over. I wanted so badly for Multiversus to find its footing. Season after season, I came to this game praying that this would be the one that finally fixed all of those issues so that people would actually be able to engage with the material and begin to see what I see. A fun, overly gimmicky, wild take on a genre that has been known for playing it safe. But that day never came, and now through some combination of developer incompetence and corporate meddling, it never will. And that really sucks. That's it. It sucks. On February 25th, 2025, after a purging of social media channels, it was announced that Multiversus developer Player First Games would be shut down alongside a handful of other studios, wrapping the Multiversus story in a nice little bow. This indie studio that accidentally created a smash hit love letter to Warner Bros. Went on to be treated like every other WB project in recent years, being painfully underutilized and shut down less than a year after their acquisition. And while many will remember Multiversus as yet another example of the mindless IP shoveling and burning of completed assets that Warner Bros. Has become known for, just another rung in the ladder of WB's many failures, I will always look back on my time with the game fondly. Multiversus was a disaster, a game that always felt like it was on the verge of greatness but could never quite figure it out. And now, I wouldn't be shocked if nobody remembered this game's existence in a year. Both Warner Bros. Crossovers and live service meltdowns like this are a dime a dozen nowadays, and nothing about this game's circumstances were so extraordinary that it would be a particularly memorable story. But I love this stupid game with all my heart. I love this community. I love the people I've met, and I love every single one of you who took this journey with me. So Multiversus, I promise you one thing. I won't forget you, buddy.